There's one more thing I forgot to talk about yesterday for buying your first firearm. Don't be swayed by the guy behind the counter at the gun store or your buddy who thinks that you must buy a Glock. A lot of people who aren't actually all that knowledgeable about firearms, or their knowledge comes more from legend than fact, will be more than happy to influence your decision on what to buy. They may try to steer you toward a particular gun because they don't actually know all that much more than you, but they know a lot about this gun. A lot of gun sellers are also compensated on commission or have to meet other quotas, so they may steer you toward a much more expensive gun than what you really need. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from someone who was really excited to tell me about their new Taurus revolver that shoots shotgun shells, or how they just bought the Dirty Harry 44 Magnum revolver. And then a few weeks later, they tell me about the 9mm semi-automatic they bought. So there are a few things I'd stick to when picking out your first gun. If you're buying handguns, stick to the name brands. Glock, Smith & Wesson, Springfield, Walther, Sig Sauer, Colt, Ruger, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few. Note I said Ruger with an R and not Luger with an L. Competition in this market is fierce, with Glock being number one and pretty much everybody else trying to convince you to buy theirs. This means that you're paying a premium for brand name, but none of those guys are making any bad guns, and the price for basic guns is generally not ridiculous. I personally don't like Glocks because of how they fit in my hand, so I own Smith & Wesson and 1911s. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with less well-known manufacturers. I really like my German Sporting Group, or GSG 1911, chambered in .22 caliber, and there's nothing wrong with Versa's low-cost 380 autos. But for every good handgun manufacturer, there are two or three, well, not bad per se, but mediocre. Except for High Point. Never buy a High Point. If you're buying an AR-type rifle, you're really going to have trouble finding a truly bad build. You can do it, but the AR-type is so common and with such specific tolerances that manufacturers basically can't consistently build bad ones and get away with it. In this market, there are a lot of really good discount manufacturers, so you don't have to spend the money on name brand, unless you just want that manufacturer's warranty that you're never going to use. The fact is that as a new shooter, you're never going to be able to max out the capability of a mediocre build AR. The opposite is true of AK-style rifles. Most American manufacturers of the AK type are mom-and-pop operations, so they have difficulty maintaining reliable quality. The AK was designed to be mass-produced, and so unless the builder is a master gunsmith, they're probably not making them right in small batches. Palmetto State Armory is the only U.S. manufacturer I've heard of that doesn't have problems with consistency, and that's pretty recent for them. Most former Soviet republics still manufacture good AKs, so you're in reasonably good shape sticking with those, even if some AK guys will give you a hard time for bringing your Wasser to the range. If you're buying a plinker that shoots a small caliber round, I'd say just stick to something in .22 long rifle or .22 LR for your first. .22 LR is the most common small caliber cartridge, so it's usually easy to find, and you mostly can't go wrong buying a firearm chambered in .22 LR. Mostly. The USFA 22 Zip is a prime example of how every rule has an exception. If you're buying a shotgun, my primary recommendation is don't spend a whole lot of money. I'm not really a shotgun guy, so take my advice with a grain of salt. But while you probably shouldn't buy a bargain bin $100 shotgun, you shouldn't be buying a $3,000 showpiece with gold inlay stock and fillery machined into the barrel either. While you can certainly find a bad shotgun, sticking with name brands like Remington and Mossberg will help. If you haven't spent a lot of time working with shotguns, just remember that the smaller the gauge number, the bigger the shell.
So a 20 gauge is smaller than a 16 gauge, which is smaller than a 12 gauge. The bigger the shell, the bigger the boom, and the less pleasant it is to shoot. That said, if you spend a little more for a semi-automatic shotgun, it will be a lot more pleasant than most other styles of shotgun. A lot of people talk about the ka-chuck sound that a pump shotgun makes being a deterrent to home intruders. I don't know how true that is. I've never heard of anyone being frightened off by racking a shotgun outside of a TV show or a Hollywood movie. Most people just don't understand what that noise is. The same is true for racking a semi-automatic handgun slides and pulling back revolver hammers. Another note, bigger does not mean better. Just because a gun has a small cartridge doesn't mean it's less effective, and bigger bullets aren't necessarily more effective. With practice, small caliber cartridges can be just as effective as large caliber rounds. Often they're more effective because the gun is easier to control. So whether you buy a .380, a 9mm, .357 Magnum, or a .45 ACP, the fact is that just about any of those bullets will be effective at stopping an attacker. Did you notice the word I used a few sentences ago? Practice. It doesn't matter what gun you buy. If you don't practice with it, it won't be effective at all. So when you buy your first gun, make a plan to become proficient in its use. Get training from an experienced instructor. Learn how to safely store, handle, and care for your firearm. If you like this video, please remember to click the like and subscribe buttons so you'll catch future videos. Welcome to the world of firearms ownership. Stay safe, and I'll see you at the range.